Okay, good evening, everyone. Today's topic is reconnaissance and enumeration. Just a quick disclaimer on this topic, because we are actually doing some snooping around. We just have to let you guys know that don't hack shit without permission, because you might get one of these very angry emails from ASU and you don't want one of those. So I highly recommend not attacking ASU at all whatsoever. And if you do, you didn't learn it from DevilSec. So just letting you guys know. So for a quick recap, this is our second formal presentation. We've only had one presentation so far, and that was about Linux and how to interact with the command line interface. If you're not familiar with Linux at all, don't worry about it. It's not that complicated. And if you have never heard of Linux before, and if this is your first meeting, I'll actually be headed to the Memorial Union after this to hang out with the ASU Linux users group for their Install Fest. I think I threw a note in announcements. But like, if you still need help setting up a virtual machine with Linux in it, feel free to stop by because I'll be there and I might be able to help you. Okay, so let's talk about penetration testing methodology. I mean, that's why we're all here, because this is a penetration testing club. So everyone has a different methodology or a different, set of steps that you want to go through when you're attacking a target. Everyone has their own different steps, but these are just some common 4 steps that I've seen used around here in DevilSec. Step 1 is know your scope. Don't go out of scope. Don't go out of scope. I'm just gonna say it twice because you really don't want to get arrested or fined, but you want to hack with permission only, and you don't want to attack targets that you don't have permission to attack. If it's in scope, go ham. If it's out of scope, don't even think about it. But once you've set a solid scope, everything's written down, contracts are signed, waivers are filled, then you can do your reconnaissance and enumeration, which is what today's topic is. Essentially, it's just gathering info about the target. After you've gathered info, you can go to the exploitation phase, where you actually run your attacks and you gain initial access. And then there's the post-exploitation phase, which is really vague, really broad, and anything that comes after exploitation is basically lumped together here. So it's whether it's elevating to administrator, or if it's just moving around laterally through a network, or if it's just covering your tracks, gaining persistence, installing backdoors. That's post-exploitation, but that's not today's topic. We're not going to worry about that. Today we're just talking about reconnaissance and enumeration. So what is recon? It's arguably the most important phase out of these 4. It's about understanding the target, and it's about finding where the weakest link is. I forget where I heard this, but every network is only as strong as its weakest link. And during recon, we find where the weak links are, and then after that, we can poke holes a lot more easily. So recon this, recon that. What are we even looking for when we're attacking something? Well, we can look for pretty much anything. We can look for usernames. Who is on this network? Are there any open TCP or UDP ports on the server? What are the domain names? Are there any email addresses? Are there open network shares? What services is the company running? Pretty much anything exposed to us is fair game. So we want to collect as much info as possible. So here are some of the tools. There are a lot more tools than just these 6. But there's no way I'd be able to go over every single recon tool in a single meeting. I'm not even going over all of these 6 in a single meeting. We could have an entire week's worth of content just on Nmap. but I'm obviously not going to do that because I guess I'm coping. So Nmap is a port scanner. It's the port scanner everyone uses. If you're not familiar with a port, it's kind of an odd concept if you've never heard of it. So essentially, every computer has an IP address, and associated on your computer is a very large number of ports. It's like 65,000 something. I think if you do, it's just 2 to the 16th power. Let me do some quick math. All right. Yep, 65,535 ports is 2 to the 16th power minus 1. So that's how many ports you got. And they're all numbered. So for example, if you find a server and TCP port number 80 is open, you'll probably think, oh, hey, this server is probably running HTTP. If port 443 is open, you'll probably think, oh, hey, HTTPS is open. So you can start attacking this server as if it was a web application. If you see port 22 open, you'll know, oh, hey, this thing has SSH on it. That sort of thing. So Nmap, it's very useful. Pharaohbuster and Fuff are both very similar. They can both do an attack called forced browsing, which is a recon technique on web applications. It's where you take some website like, I don't know, www.devilsec.com, and forced browsing is where you search for endpoints. So I want to search for /index. Does it exist? No? Okay, I'll go to the next thing. /admin. Does it exist? /foobar. I don't know, blog. That sort of thing. That's forced browsing. Just taking common words and spitting it at the end of URL, seeing if it sticks, because they might not always be linked on the front page. Fuff is a little bit more flexible than Pharaohbuster. Pharaohbuster is only used for forced browsing, but Fuff can also send, post requests, get requests. It can fuzz web app forms. So it's more of a general web app fuzzer while Pharaohbuster is just for forced browsing. These top 3 are probably what you want to use for the Try Hack Me room we're going to do after the presentation. And if you have no idea like how to use these tools, don't worry about it because I'll do a walkthrough of the Try Hack Me room. The ones on the bottom are a little bit more niche, but they're used very frequently. WP Scan is a recon tool specifically for WordPress sites. So if you've never heard of WordPress, it's a content management system, usually used for blogs. It's written in PHP, and you can have all these fancy plugins. And these plugins are totally garbage. They're awful. And WP Scan can be used to find a whole ton of vulns in some of these plugins, or it can just find WordPress vulnerabilities in general. Nikto, oh my god, that's the default template because I'm using a PowerPoint template, and it's the farthest planet is a template sentence. So I didn't fix this slide. But anyway, Nikto is a general purpose web app scanner. Usually it's not anything like Pharaohbuster or WP Scan, but you can use it to like scan for like the web application backend. And Dig is used to query a DNS server, so it's just used as a DNS client. So you can search for MX records and Quad A records to search for what domain names is this company using.
You want to explain quickly what MX records are?
Oh yes, let me do that. So DNS stands for the domain name system, domain name service, domain name sussy. I don't know what it stands for. It's domain name something, but it converts words that I can remember to IP addresses, because I'm a monkey brain and I cannot remember numbers, but I can remember words. So if I go to google.com, lucky me, I can visit the website. I can't read those words. Oh, that's a good point. I am illiterate too. But unfortunately for us, computers can't actually read words, but they can read IP addresses. So DNS is a protocol or a service. I don't remember what the S stands for, but it converts this domain name.
It's domain name system.
System? Okay, it's a system that converts these letters into IP addresses. So if I do something like dig www, I don't have dig installed. That's a good meme. Okay, but anyway, it converts it to some IP address like, I don't know. It could be 10.10.11.12. The name of Google's DNS server, the big one that everyone remembers, is just 8.8.8.8. So if you're like, oh crap, DNS isn't working. Gosh darn, Partac S DNS utils. Okay, I'll run that in the background. But yeah, DNS just converts words to IP addresses. Oh, and an MX record is a mail record. So it's the IP address of the mail server that the company would be using. But we don't actually need to use dig for the Try Hack Me room that we're going to do afterwards. So don't worry about it. It's a good tool though. I do want to go a little bit more in depth about Nmap because it is pretty important. I already explained ports a little bit, but they're kind of like mailboxes. I should have said that first because that's probably the best analogy I can think of. If a computer is an apartment, each port is like a mailbox, and if you want to send some data to an application like HTTP, you're going to send it to mailbox number 80. If you want to send packets to SSH, you will send it to mailbox number 22, etc., etc. This command up here is a pretty typical Nmap scan, a whole lot of options that, and there's no way that any of us are going to memorize this, but Nmap is a command. TAC-PTAC is an option that lets you scan all 65,000 something ports. If you don't put in the TAC-PTAC, by default, it just scans the top 1,000 most common ports. TAC-SC is default scripts. So I can actually just show you on the next slide. Default scripts, Nmap can run enumeration scripts. So for example, when it finds SSH, it grabs the public key or whatever. I don't actually understand what this stuff is, but we can see for 80, it grabs some enumeration scripts. It gets the title. The title of this web app is just directory listening for /, and it grabs the server header from the web app, but that's the TAC-SC option. We should have had a networking crash course prior to this meeting. Yeah, I just totally forgot about the networking meeting, and so we're just kind of skipping that. The TAC-SV option grabs versions. So this column over here sees that it's SSH, or rather OpenSSH version 8.2p1 on an Ubuntu machine. So with Nmap, we already identified that this is an Ubuntu machine. TAC-T5 means to run an aggressive scan. Oh yeah.
SV is also for a service. It won't tell you which service it is without SV. That's another thing to note.
Oh, is it really? Oh, the service?
I believe, I'm almost certain it's both service and version.
And version?
So
Oh,
it won't
okay,
even
okay.
show you OpenSSH. It will just show you
22 open.
22 TCP
Open.
SSH, but it won't tell you OpenSSH. It won't tell you simple HTTP server. It'll just
Oh,
say
gotcha.
HTTP.
Yeah. Yeah, that checks out. Basically, it's just this whole column right here. Oh yeah, the TAC-T5 is an aggressive scan. Nmap scans take, they just take forever. They take a really long time. They take even longer for UDP scans because it's harder to check if a UDP port is open, but it's pretty easy to check if a TCP port is open. But TCP takes a hell of a long time to check. So that's why I put the TAC-T5 option, just to make it go burr. And then here I just have the IP address of the target I want to scan. And then I'm outputting the nmap to all formats into files called myscan. It'll be something like myscan.xml, myscan.gnmap, myscan.nmap, and yup, okay, yup, this is a good meme. I like this meme. Yeah, everybody look in voice chat. That's a solid meme, because that's all you need to know about networking. That's literally it. That'll just serve as our networking meeting. Pharaoh Buster. I think it's written in Rust, so it's blazing fast. It does force browsing, as I already explained. So here we have, some examples. Maybe it'll find doublesec.com/foo or admin or index. I don't know. If it returns 404, Pharaoh Buster will say it's not here. If it returns 200 something, Pharaoh Buster will say, yup, this endpoint exists. Here's an example of what a Pharaoh Buster scan looks like. I'm doing a Pharaoh Buster tacu http://wordpress.devil.sec. This is not a real website. I just threw this together on my own machine. The TAC-B is to collect backups. So it'll also search for things like index.back or index_backup, stuff like that. And I added a TAC-N option for do not scan recursively. Pharaoh Buster is kind of nice because it's recursive by default, but if you're just going for a quick top-level scan, you don't need to bother with recursive scans. And you can see the results here on the bottom. A GET request to /WP includes returns a 301, which is a redirect, I believe, but it just redirects to WP includes /, which is a directory.
301 is temporary redirect, if I'm not mistaken. 302 is permanent.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. And here 403 is so a GET request to /server status returned a 403, which I think is forbidden.
Yep.
If that's right? Okay, yeah, 403 forbidden. So we don't have the correct privileges for server status, but if we were able to do something like a SSRF attack, then yeah, maybe we would be able to view the server status page. So that would be it.
I was wrong. 301 is permanent, 302 is temporary.
Oh, okay. Yeah, they're both redirects. Yeah. We were close. So before I move on, does anybody have any questions about any of these tools? Anybody totally lost? Feel free to ask any questions.
Oh, do you want to mention Shodan and the Harvester? Because I see you listed them, but you haven't mentioned what they are yet.
Oh yeah.
Recon.
Yeah, I can list. I can talk about those real quick. I don't actually have a Shodan account, so I can't show it off. I also don't have the Harvester installed either, but I can just explain it.
Just explain it. It's fine.
Okay. Yeah, so Shodan.io is a passive recon tool that lets you search for IoT devices on the open internet. For instance, if you want to search for cameras, Shodan.io crawls pretty much most of the open internet, and it'll grab open devices. It can get cameras, routers, smart coffee makers, the whole shebang, any open servers, and you can use Shodan.io as a search. Oh God, what's it called? A browser.
Search engine. Pick it.
A search engine.
Shodan as your Google of the IP space. It's the Google of the IP space. Anything that is exposed to the internet and to the public internet, it will go find it and it will index it. And then now you can just go on Shodan.io and search either a particular IP, a particular service, a particular port. Let's say you want to see all the ports or services open on a particular IP, you can just go and phone a particular IP and get all of that and what they're running. Are you looking, so, I don't know, say tomorrow we have a CVE in the latest Windows RDP version. Now you can search up Windows RDP version, I don't know how many, and then see all of the instances that are still listed, and then from there, be able to use the new CVE and export it.
Yeah, that's a good explanation of Shodan.io. Yeah, it's a search engine. The Harvester is a wrapper for search engines. So it'll search multiple search engines for you, and it returns email addresses for a target. So if you want to search for email addresses associated with DevilSec, it'll return a whole bunch of email addresses of like DevilSec people or whatever.
Other good passive oh, sorry. Go on, Fad.
Oh, I was just gonna go ahead and explain the difference between active and passive recon if you want to throw in another tool.
I was just gonna throw in one other good passive recon is one of there's like tons of various tools that do this, but that just search through Git repos. If you're ever working with source code or a particular Git repository, being able to search through it for any keys or past credentials is a there's tons of tools that do that, and that's a good way of doing recon. Because sometimes people will commit credentials, access tokens, keys, and even if they're no longer present in the current version of the source code, all these tools will go in every past commit, every past branch, and see if there's anything to spot. And then you can find yourself with now you have an access token or a key to something, to an admin portal, for example.
Yep. An example of a tool like this is GitGot, if I recall.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's some of them.
Yeah. So, dude, shout out to that one dude in ASULUG who committed his entire password manager database to his public GitHub. Dude, that was funny. I think I still have a copy of that. No, I don't.
Passwords manager, or was it just a notepad.txt that
it was a proper password database. It was like It was KeyPass or something. Yeah, it wasn't just a TXT file. That would have been a little bit more messy. Yeah. Anyway, we got a little bit sidetracked. Either way, there's two types of recon. There's active reconnaissance and passive reconnaissance. So active reconnaissance is when you make direct contact with a target. So you're actually visiting their website. You're running an Nmap scan on their server. You're doing forced browsing on their web app, etc., etc. Passive recon is indirect contact. So even if you don't even have access to their server, you can probably still Google their public records. You can, of course, use Shodan.io, which is just a search engine. You can look up their public DNS records with dig or NSLOOKUP. I don't think anyone uses NSLOOKUP anymore though. But yeah, anybody have any questions between active and passive recon? The differences are they're pretty clear. Passive recon, you're just not making actual contact. Okay, I guess I'll move on. Oh, okay, that's the end of the presentation. We're just gonna do a try hack me lab. It's an unfortunate name. It's just called the Pickle Rick CTF, but it's actually a pretty good lab. Trust me. Does anybody have any questions before we move on? All right, cool. Anyway, I'm gonna stop the recording.